All right. Good morning, everybody. This is the February 9th Cluster API Provider Nested office hours. Again, as always, this is recorded and posted to YouTube, so don't say anything you wouldn't want to be published to the whole world, and then we can get started. Faye, I added your item to the top, so you can actually just get started on that.
Yeah, just want to give you guys a heads up because I think Waiting was telling us it is not very convenient to add a new thinker, which requires some code changes for the existing code. So we face the same problem internally. So yeah, so we decided to refactor most of the thinker code. We have done a few steps. First, moving all the the multi-cluster reconciler framework outside of thinker and put to the UTL. So which means any other whatever controller you want to implement the kind of multi-cluster reconciler, you can leverage the framework which is not tied to thinker. So which also facilitated my scheduling, my scheduler, the prototype kind of thing, because my scheduler also needs kind of multi-cluster controller style. This is one step. Second step is we're trying to remove all the hard-coded types in the MC controller. Now it's a refactor type matching. So there's no hard-code type anymore in the MC controller. So everything is in the refactor. So to do the comparison and to do the mapping match. That's the second step. The third step is we slightly change the registration steps. Instead of, if you guys still remember, in the resource we have a registration .go. You have to explicitly add your code if you add a new resource controller to the registration. So we slightly changed that approach. Basically, we move the registration to the init function of each resource module. So every time, so then we have a centralized place to import every resource you are wanting to register. So in that way, to adding a new CRD, pretty much you only need to add one line in the resource import. That's it, and no existing code needs to be changed. So just add one line. Tell me which module you want to import. Then you can just add your code, your separate directory, to follow our current style, add init functions to register your CRD and implement the controller, the interface. I think the change to the existing code should be minimal now. Yeah, that's what happens currently.
Yeah, hi, Faye. So I have a few questions. I tightly follow the progress of this code change because on the same time I also doing this internally. So one question is that is this the final steps, or you are still planning to do more kind of a changing on this for the CRD?
This is probably we will do a few other minor changes, but not in the interface layer. Probably interface in the sense that we may rename the MC controller. There is a get method, and there is another method called get by type. So these two methods may cause confusion, because if you look at the current code after refactoring, sometimes you will see get and get by time used interchangeably, not interchangeably, but you can see in one file, sometimes I call get, sometimes I call get by type. So there is some inherence in the sense that get, the type you are trying to get is the type that you register to the MC controller. So this is very implicit. So I was thinking changing the method name of get to something else, be more explicit, more.
Yeah, this is fine.
Other than that, I don't have further plans to do that.
So this is the so I can finally rely on this. This is maybe the stabilize the code, right? If you just get involved. Okay. So another question that in our implementation that the VC Syncer is a standalone module, which is single service when single process, and our CRD Syncer is another process. So the change you are made is designed to have both CRD and standard Syncer in the same process, correct?
Yeah.
If I know.
Yes. Yeah, because so there's, to me it is okay. It is okay to separate them, but from the maintainers perspective, if they can be combined, so why not?
Okay, this is totally fine. Another question is that normally for the CRD, we have a large customized CRD client set, informer, and lister. All these things can be generated based on the CRD types. And we use that generated code to maintain this client, CRD client connections, reconcile.
Yeah.
So I cannot see that with this new change, I still need to rely on this client, right? All this customized.
Definitely, you have to.
Yeah, you have. So in this case, our code, the register, so the scheme itself, I need to add all the scheme. Sometimes there still have a little bit complication to add the scheme. I think. So it's not one line change for sure. I still need to maintain an addition. So on the scheme side, I have to add this new types in so that they can go, they can resolve types. And also on the CRD syncer side, I have to reconstruct this customized client. Cannot use a client Go client because this is just a standard client. I have to construct. So I think this is the same thing for your internal kind of things, correct?
So our purpose is first, so we don't want any code changes to the framework code. So that's the point. You have new code which is inevitable. You have to add a new client, client for the CRD. You cannot avoid that. The reason is that we don't want to change the framework code for every new CRD, because that code is supposed to be stable and reliable. So that's the main reason to do the refactoring. But I agree. But for the schema part, I think I need to double check. So I would hope the schema restoration can be done.
We can do it in the initialize the function. It's no problem. But for the testing code, I think for testing code, currently you provide a fake client for standard. This is so fine. When you do the namespace, do the pod, so fine. But for the CRD, sometimes you need both the client, the standard client, as well as the CRD client in order to really do your test. So this way, now our test frameworks only give two sets of clients: supercluster standard client and the virtual cluster client. So in order to make this work, we still need to maintain a private test framework so that we can manage all these 4 types of clients: super, CRD client, super, standard client, virtual client, and virtual CRD client. So are you have any plan to modify that, or seems complicated, this part? It cannot be very generic because this is really test framework for my CRD together with the standard client.
For now, I would say maybe test framework, you have to duplicate it.
Yeah, this is how I did. It's hard for me to, unless you have a plan to change it, I'll wait for your change. But otherwise, this will be a little bit customized.
It's kind of, yeah, I don't, let me discuss internally first. I can give you answer maybe tomorrow, but my current thought is probably we won't change, we won't change that framework because it is, let me think about it. It's probably doable.
It's hard. It's hard. I just finished the test framework. I had added this new type because you cannot mix them together unless you really use dynamic kind of listing, which I discussed last time. But yeah,
that route. But think about the changes and that really worth it, or compare we just copy it. So
okay, if you don't have any change, I will add more change so that you can update the client on the fly by a little bit small change there.
Yeah, so we can do this. So I think whatever experience you have so far in terms of testing or adding the schema, I think we can come up with either document, probably not, if not formally, code changes, but based on current code. I think if you agree that our syncer framework code is good enough, it's kind of stable, Then adding CRD is we can write a kind of a tutorial or documents about how to add a CRD. I would expect most of the things just additive, not changing. So it sounds interesting to new people because this kind of decouple, not completely decouple, but 99% of decouple with the framework code. So do you want to drive that? I think I will more than welcome if you want to do that.
Okay, I can talk to Chris and we'll find some time to work on that with your folks as well. Yeah.
You just share your experience with document people. Next people can just follow your experience.
Okay.
Yeah. That's my part.
Sorry, just writing up that last note. Cool. You're going to outline a document about how to actually use the VC Syncer framework for handling CRDs is what is in essence?
Yeah, that's my proposal to Wayne. Maybe you can drive this.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you and I can talk about that way.
Yeah,
cool.
Sure.
I also skipped over something. We do have one new person. Kaushik, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Hi, thank you, Chris. So yeah, I'm Kumar Kaushik, and I just started working and getting involved with the cluster lifecycle CAPN provider. So started to attend this SIG meeting. So thanks to Chris and Wade for introducing me, and I'll gradually get involved more and more.
Cool. Glad to have you. Yeah, and then the only update I have is I still haven't actually published the updates to NCP doc. I'm working on that this afternoon, and I should be able to get something up and running. Chow, I also haven't had a chance to review the nested etcd PR. Is that in a place that you want it reviewed? I know there's a couple changes as of yesterday.
Yeah, just remove some of the code for generating the PKI, the certificate, because you said that part will be down in the nested control plane controller. Yeah, there's not much I wanted to say today. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, I'll give that I'll give that a review as well. Sorry that I hadn't gotten around to it.
Chris, so
Yeah.
I just went through this document you just published. It's pretty lightweight. And are you going to add more things, or are you just work based on this document generate code and start to coding?
No, we had the whole conversation last week. I haven't gone and updated it since our long discussion to add certificate management, kube config management, and maintaining the owner references between all of the nested objects. So I'm still working on writing up that information.
Okay.
If you go on the actual agenda last week, the action items were for me to do that, and I didn't get it.
Oh, okay, I didn't go through it. Okay, just double check.
Yeah, so I'm just behind over here. Cool. All right. Does anybody else want to bring anything up? Otherwise, we're at the end of our agenda. Yeah.
I have a question for the testing client. You mentioned so is this client code based? This is not controller runtime based, right? From my understanding, what you mentioned before.
Wei Fei, that's for you.
For us?
It's client Go. It's client Go based.
Got it. Just to provide a 2 cents on that, the generated client code, we had issues between versions because they might bring in the breaking changes. So if you can use the test env for controller runtime, it's much more solid than what I would expect the client go. But just 2 cents. I'm not trying to be prescriptive here for sure.
I totally agree with you because we saw that the compatibility issues in other projects when we upgrade Kubernetes from 1.16 to 1.18, the generated client Go code breaks. I know that. That's I'm not exactly expert on controller runtime based code, but I think I can talk with our. But this is mostly for Wei actually, because you are trying to use generated CRD clients. So I'm not exactly sure internally what kind of code generator they use for the CRD client. But I know it's just one project, but not this project. They use a client Go based. I'm assuming Wayne also use a client Go based. client Go based client, right? You are using the,
I think
Yeah.
so. I think so.
It's this-
I double check. This is all generated a long time ago. I haven't generated myself.
Yeah, we maintain off of just the standard code generator project, the actual clients and the client set listers and informers for those. There's no reason really technically that we couldn't switch that out for something for controller runtime based and be able to use a little bit more of the dynamic clients. We could talk about that and see if that would help any of these cases.
Okay.
it depends whether you are hitting the compatibility issues. We do hit in the past.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
Okay.
One other benefit of that is like because I've heard like we need duplicate code, and that's like what kind of client Go like generation code like actually brings in. But the dynamic client, so a lot of people are scared because like, oh, it's dynamic, like there isn't type safety. We actually made like sure that like there is no more runtime objects or like interfaces like all over the place in controller runtime itself. So it's much stronger than it was for sure. There isn't like that amount of type safety that like you would get from a generic client. Gotta wait for Go 2.0 for that. Yeah, I'm happy to help. Like, so like if you like our blog, so like you would like some to go through some examples, happy to help you all.
You have a link for the example. I would like to take a look. So if this
I also
I mean I can show the controller run I'm using Cluster API. We use this a lot.
You can also just point to the client. You can just also point to the controller runtime examples directory. Those are decent to show at least just connecting to a client and not having to set up the whole entire manager and so on and so forth. Because I doubt the VC it would be a big effort in the VC Syncer to replace the way that it manages controllers, but being able to just use the package client, library would be useful.
So is this a linked list that put all this new client into this linked list, correct? This is what we discussed before, correct?
We did discuss this at one point. This is when you brought up the unstructured clients. This is what we were talking about adding instead of using unstructured. Yeah, this is exactly that.
Yeah. This was what planning before, but last time there someone guys mentioned that this is not stable, something. Then we didn't go further during the meeting.
Yeah, Vince, can you share some links, maybe in the chat channel or somewhere else?
Okay.
I could also do a demo next week if you. We have this quickly, right?
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
If you can,
Because it might be scary at first, so like I just want to make sure that like you're on, like not overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's much easier if we have this kind of dynamic client, so that we can maintain even lean kind of a code base.
And on the testing side, so TestM is a whole test environment in controller runtime that actually spins up locally an API server controller manager. I believe that's it. So an etcd as binaries, and like it linked them all together while the test is running. So you can also spin up more. In fact, like when you were talking about like, oh, I have a need for like multiple like test environments, we have the same need in Cluster API because there is like a concept of management cluster and then a workload cluster. So what we do, like in some places, is like we spin up two test ends to kind of like have two kind of API servers and etcd separate. And that helps a lot because like you don't need fake generation, because the fake client is actually really buggy, and it actually doesn't, sometimes it doesn't cover all the expectations that the API server does.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, one example is like field indexes, like they don't support that, and or like it didn't support resource versions like until like not long ago. So it's like still a lot behind. So like we actually like are trying not to use the fake client anymore, because it's not ideal to have this super fake environment, like it actually doesn't test anything.
So, but the only thing that based on my past experience with the controller runtime test framework, the problem is, at least I hit a problem. So the pod number used by the etcd can be used by others, and the test framework cannot be started. I know it's because my
no, it's random. It's random now. So like you could, like I've been able to run like 10 different test environments on my machine locally. Because if I do all the tests in parallel, it will try to spin up all at the same time.
Is this new? Because I think maybe a year back, it was a fixed pod number. So I constantly hitting the test failure.
Yeah, no, we improved a lot on these things. But yeah, 100% you can do it. Like you can spin up multiple test environments.
Okay, cool. Then that's very useful actually, even if my side. So I need to spin a lot of. I was right, about to start to write the fake client for my experiment, for my scheduled experiment. So I think now maybe I can leverage that framework. Good to know. Thanks.
There's still some subtle differences though, like to pay attention to, that are like weird gotchas, like finalizers and things like that are a little bit funky still, correct? Or no?
Not on the test end.
Okay.
Yeah. And
cool.
One more thing I was noticing about a year ago about that controller runtime, the namespace deletion has some problem.
It works today.
Okay, because the syndrome is the namespace cannot be deleted from the test API server for some reason. A year back.
I'm quite sure we're deleting namespaces today. I'm quite sure though that like as it's true for Kubernetes in general, like you need to delete all the objects in the namespace first and then delete the namespace. But this is an actual requirement for the.
No, I don't think you have that requirement, right, Chris? You can just delete the namespace and the GC controller will delete everything.
If you have finalizers, that doesn't work.
If you have finalizers.
Yeah, so something's actually if something's blocking it. If you have a finalizer declared on any of the objects, it's not going to actually tear that down
manually.
unless the controller removes it when it gets a deletion timestamp. But it should still operate at least. But if you have a finalizer on an object and you're testing one controller but not the other one, and it doesn't actually call this function to go remove the finalizer, then yeah, it will. But there is still, like, if you're on the same object, if you're on the same controller in the same object, it should be able to run.
Yeah, I think in the past year, the reason I don't have any evidence, maybe I'm wrong, but I remember it looks weird is that namespace looks empty and they cannot be deleted. I think especially in the test API server and the controller.
Yeah, I'm quite sure that like we actually are deleting namespaces these days. Actually, like one thing that we did for some tests is to run different iterations of the test in different namespaces, so they're all contained and they don't reuse the same stuff all the time. Generate name also works great because if you want a randomness and like not rely on the same names for tests. Yeah, these are all things that like have been useful, but we use LINQ extensively, like really extensive use of it. So
okay,
I'm gonna prep a demo for next week so that we can walk through it and
yeah. I think my biggest concern was the pod. So if the pod number is not randomly generated, if there was a collision, and that's
I'll double check, but like 100% sure that like now you can run multiple.
Okay. Cool. I think this is very relevant because it's about the testing framework.
Awesome. I've got you on the agenda, or I've got an action item for you to do that demo next week. Thanks, Vince. I appreciate that, or we all appreciate that. Cool. Anybody else want to bring up anything? Awesome. I'm going to throw one more thing out there. I might bring next week or the following week. We've been doing something internally. So how we had all those conversations about cluster IPs in services. So Faye, I wanted to kind of bring this up again, as well as we potentially have a path forward that we're going to use for right now. Right now it's all completely, it's all changed in the VC syncer. So I was gonna potentially put together a pull request that has it as a feature gate, but I'll bring a little bit more information about what it is and how it works, maybe to the next week, if not the following week, about how it's actually being done. But in essence, we had to change a couple of things like where services, so we end up having a webhook that implements the creation of services in the supercluster. I think I talked to you a little bit about this, but it goes and creates those things. So it's instead of the VC syncer path of being backgrounded, it's done as a proxy for just that resource. And then the VC syncer, we had to change a couple pieces so that we could get the Kubernetes service to get the actual IP of the cluster IP of the API server service. So that basically we just do a little bit of like flipping in there. So instead of looking for the Kubernetes service, we grab that service and add that cluster IP. And then you had brought up the issue around UIDs and how the VC syncer is expecting data to be in the object, or else it goes and tries to clean up, like the patroller goes and tries to clean up any services that have mismatched UIDs. And so there's some weirdness in there where if you use and I think this is what you're calling out, but if you use a webhook, you don't have the UID of the object when it gets added into the supercluster. And so you don't have a UID. So the VC syncer, I've made some like hacky changes. And so I'm interested to hear your thoughts on how we could potentially do this in a secure way, where it would go and grab after the fact. If it's a pre-created service, it kind of adopts it, similar to how like a deployment can adopt replica sets. And so it just basically adds the UID and then allows it to sync from there on out. So
yeah, but I think if I still remember, my concern was, that is just part of concern. The other concern is the source of truth. So what if the people delete the supercluster service?
Oh, interesting. So if the supercluster service gets deleted, it's out of sync, and you can't go and update the tenant.
There's no way to recover it in your model. That's my biggest concern, because you are changing the source of truth.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a very good call out. Cool. All right, I will. I'll noodle a little bit on that, and then, like I said, I'll bring it up in a couple.
But even with the DNS solutions, if you delete a supercluster service, it still doesn't work, right?
No, it does, because it updates the annotation, and so then Core DNS picks up the new IP. But it doesn't change. But it just doesn't change the actual cluster IP. It's so like the service is still not routable. So we kind of get into a weird state with that entire setup, anyways.
The problem is, it's a kernel model. If you delete that service, the syncer will create one. So that's the thing. In your new model, who is going to create that service if it is deleted?
In the supercluster, yeah. Basically, how do we reconcile if the supercluster service is deleted and the tenant control plane still has it declared?
Yeah, the tenant is the service, but super doesn't have it. So now it's coming to the weird state because no one is going to correct it. That's my biggest concern.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I'll continue to noodle on that and see if we can bring up something.
Yeah, beyond all the rest is just implementation issues. I believe you can work around it, but this is fundamental issue. Just if you have some solution to that, I'm open to that as well.
Cool, sounds good. All right, everybody, we can call it and give back 30 minutes.
Okay, see you. Bye-bye.
Cool, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
See ya.